My name is Hallie Eakin. I'm a professor in the School of Sustainability. My research is on climate change adaptation, and I've been working in a variety of places, both rural and urban, for a long time, trying to understand how people make decisions in face of climate risk while also managing all sorts of other challenges that they face. So I've worked with coffee farmers and small-scale maize producers in Mexico and Central America. And most recently, I've been working in rural and urban areas to try and understand how the actions of different actors, like households, but also businesses and governments, interact to support really effective adaptation that not only addresses climate risk, but also tries to get at the underlying drivers of why we're vulnerable in the first place. And a lot of that has to do with addressing issues of social inequity, access to resources, and how we can make sure that when we're adapting, we're actually doing so in a way that is sustainable for the long term and addressing some of the major challenges that societies face beyond climate change. One of the major challenges in climate change adaptation is that surprisingly, we don't really know what kinds of adaptations are effective. We have ideas about what can be used to effectively manage risk. But in order to really measure whether things are effective, we need a really long time frame. We need to understand how decisions over time are going to address the diversity of types of risks that emerge, whether that's heat waves and flooding, hurricane. So that's one of the major challenges. The other major challenge that I'm particularly interested in is how do we make sure that our decisions to manage climate risk don't have unintended consequences and actually exacerbate existing social inequities so that people who are adapting aren't adapting just for themselves and maybe making themselves better off, but are also making sure that those adaptations don't have spillover effects for others. So that could be that, decisions that somebody makes in their own backyard actually has effects for their neighbors that actually make them more vulnerable. Or you can think of this in terms of cities and how cities are managing risks and what this means for rural areas on which they're drawing resources. So those kinds of trade-offs and thinking about how can we actually make adaptation sustainable, and sustainable in the sense that it enhances ecological resources, that it builds social equity and addresses social justice and addresses some of the very fundamental drivers of what makes us vulnerable in the first place. So my work really is at the intersection of managing climate risk as one dimension of sustainable development broadly conceived. So I'm very interested in trying to address what really makes us vulnerable in the first place. And often that has to do with structural issues in society, why certain people live in areas that are more exposed to risk than others, why they can't make decisions that might better manage climate risk, often has to do with their access to resources, their position in society, how their interests are represented in decision making. So I'm really interested in that intersection of social justice, social equity, climate risk, and governance, how we make decisions as a society that really make sure that everyone thrives and build the resources for future generations. So in essence, what I'm fundamentally pursuing is sustainable climate risk adaptation. If I had a chance to go back and do an undergraduate degree, I definitely would have pursued sustainability if it had been offered at that time. Sustainability allows you to think outside the box. You're not confined by disciplinary constructs or what types of solutions might be considered a legitimate option. It gives you the opportunity to work broadly on problems and finding solutions by integrating knowledge both in and outside academia, to apply that knowledge in projects that actually make a difference here and now. And it allows you also to think in the long term. Sustainability really is about how we're making decisions today that can have effects that really improve conditions for the planet, not only today, but also into the long-term future, which of course is really critical when we're thinking about climate change. And it's an area, a domain of knowledge that gives the opportunity for a lot of creativity in pulling different strands of information, of innovation together to get those problems on a pathway to some really promising solutions.